context is absolutely essential. So that were I, for instance, to tell you a story about a woman and her husband who are sitting at home one night and they're watching TV with their children, and then men burst in upon them coming through windows and doors, and they shoot this man in the head, your response to that might be that that's a horrible, horrible thing that took place on that occasion. But when I provide additional context and say, well, hold on just a moment, the man that I've just described is Osama bin Laden. And that was SEAL Team 6 that stormed into his house and that killed him. Well, that context changes the way you understand that story. Or let us suppose, for instance, that you knew nothing about, say, World War II, and that I were to take one of these books off of my shelf over here. I were to take one of my volumes on World War II, which are, like this, the really extensive versions, or the multi-volume set, and I were to push one of them over to you, and you were to flip it open, and you were to read this passage. I hardly thought about what I saw, but I just kept on walking. It was when I crossed the river, though, that I really seemed to step into hell. The stench of the dead bodies was already overpowering in the heat of the midsummer sun. It was a living hell. Most people had been wearing light summer shirts that morning, but most of the dead were bare-chested, and many were completely naked, perhaps because their clothes had burned off of them. The parts of the body that had been exposed to the flash had suffered great burns, and the skin was turned purple and trailing from their bodies in strips. That's an ugly scene that he's describing there. And if I were to pass to you that volume and you were to read that passage relating to World War II without any context, without any knowledge of World War II, you might reply to me, there's absolutely nothing that can justify that. But then I would say to you, well, actually, there's a lot of context you need to understand. That happened in August of 1945. It's telling the story of the dropping of the atomic bomb. And the man who's relating the story is Kosaku Okabe, a Japanese soldier whose train was stopped on the edges of Hiroshima, and he had to walk into the city, and he had no knowledge of what had taken place there. And this is what he described. And I would say, look, the Japanese initiated a war in Asia in 1933. They made war on the United States at Pearl Harbor. In 1941, leaflets were dropped over Japan, 5 million of them, warning them that a wonder weapon would be used upon them if they did not surrender. And of course they didn't. And the atomic bombs were dropped. I would say to you that the dropping of the atomic bombs was justified. And when you understand that context, it makes a difference in the way that we read and we understand this.